Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. Can love and loyalty overcome the scars of financial greed? Today in the rLounge, it's just a dad trying to do right by his daughter in a world that seems all too eager to cash in on his hard-earned success. My wife tried to divorce me for my money with my daughter's support. She got almost nothing from me. I, 46 male, have been married to my wife, Leanne, 40 female, for 20 years. We have a daughter together, Mary, 19 female, who recently started college. I've always prided myself on working hard to provide a comfortable life for my family. We've never had to worry about missing bills, running short on cash, or where our next meal would come from. All in all, I earn pretty well and have what some would consider a small fortune saved away in various investments. There's enough there that we could afford to live a very lavish lifestyle if we desired, but I've always believed in being financially responsible. It's how I obtained so much wealth in the first place. I'm not trying to brag, my point is just that even though we've never had any financial troubles. That's not to say I'm tight-fisted. I'm just reasonable with money, but I understand the importance of spending a bit extra to treat ourselves sometimes. My wife was a stay-at-home mom throughout Mary's childhood, and my daughter got to go to her dream school and never had to worry about student loans. They both drove their dream car within reason. I wasn't going to buy a Lamborghini for anyone, but my wife enjoyed her Range Rover, and my daughter was happy with her BMW 3 Series. Personally, I'm a sucker for vacations, and we always took a nice family trip once a year. Back when we got married, I was already doing well for myself. I had a good job and a few responsibilities, so I funneled most of my disposable income into my various investments. This wasn't something I really shared with girls back when I was dating, so they usually thought they were going out with a high-earning man with money to spend on them. This led to more than a few horror stories where materialistic women would leave me after they found out I wasn't the type to spend lavishly, especially on girlfriends. My wife was different from other girls, though, or so I thought. She'd never given me the impression that she was after my money. At a time when I had close to 7 figures in savings and investments, I took her on a first date to a small diner. Not as a test, I just loved their coffee and still do. And she didn't complain. She even offered to split the bill, which I declined. That was when I thought I'd found the rare woman who looked for more than money in a relationship, and I immediately made moves to continue dating her. Fast forward a bit, and we're married with a child. Things have been going well for most of our marriage, or at least I thought so. We lived a comfortable life and had a beautiful, clever daughter. I think the first domino that started the collapse of my marriage was when Leanne got an idea of just how wealthy I actually was. I'm still not aware of how she found out, but her tastes changed shortly after that. Suddenly, she was asking for more extravagant things. She wanted designer clothes and expensive jewelry. Our simple family trips were no longer enough for her. Now she wanted to fly first class to 5-star resorts. At first, I tried to humor her where I could, but soon I realized that she didn't have limits to how much she was prepared to spend of the money I had spent more than half of my life building. I sat Leanne down one evening, hoping to have an honest conversation about her new expensive habits. I explained that while we had more than enough money, we needed to be responsible. I pointed out that it was financial responsibility that had enabled me to accumulate the money in the first place. I told her that I didn't want to drain our savings on frivolous things when we could be securing a better future for ourselves and Mary. I knew she wouldn't be happy about that, but I didn't expect her reaction. Leanne blew up at me. She started by calling me cheap and controlling, accusing me of being tight with my money as a form of financial abuse. She went on to complain that I had more money than anyone else she knew, but we were living like poor people. I pointed out nice cars she and my daughter drove, as well as the yearly trips, but she just scoffed, saying it was nothing compared to how we were supposed to be living. And I'm not the only one that feels like this. Mary agrees with me. Hearing Mary's name mentioned caught me off guard. I had assumed this obsession with spending money was only an issue with Leanne, but apparently she'd been feeding my daughter the same poison. Mary hadn't been talking to me as much recently, and I always thought it was just because she had moved out to college. Now I started to believe that she might be unhappy with me because I didn't spend money the way they would both prefer. In my mind, Mary was still my little girl, and I'd worked hard to make sure she understood the value of a dollar earned. Sure, I'd paid her tuition and bought her a fancy car, but that was just to make her happy. Ever since she was old enough, I'd made sure she worked part-time and summer jobs. I taught her how to invest what she made and how to spend it wisely. I could have easily just given her that money, but I was trying to prepare her for her future. It felt horrible to find out that my teachings might not have sunk in at all. After that conversation, things started to deteriorate between Leanne and me. There was tension in my relationship with my daughter as well. She called me less often, and when she did call, she would request some money to go on trips or shopping sprees with her friends. When I tried to explain what I told her mom about managing our finances, she said, "Yeah, Mom told me that was your excuse." The word excuse stung pretty bad. I didn't want to have a repeat of the argument I'd had with her mother, but it's a dad's job to put his daughter in the right path, isn't it? I tried to tell her that it wasn't an excuse, and that was how I had built up the wealth they wanted me to spend recklessly. She wasn't having it. She went on a rant about how she had friends whose families weren't nearly as rich as we were, but they were living better than we were. "We should be living like celebrities, like the Kardashians." I couldn't believe that I was hearing this from Mary. I thought I'd raised her with enough self-worth to avoid caving to peer pressure, but I'd never expected the pressure to come from her own mother. In the end, though, I was the one in charge of our finances, so we wouldn't spend any more or less than I decided. But there was a huge shift in the energy in our family. My wife and daughter both seemed to resent me for not giving in to their financial demands, though they didn't seem to have a problem spending the money I chose to give them. Funny how that works. I think I was in denial for a while after this. I was trying to salvage what I could of my relationship, even though my wife and I were starting to disagree fundamentally on budgeting and finances. But I convinced myself that I would be fine since she didn't have access to the bulk of my funds. I got a reality check in the form of a mobile notification on her phone. One day we were sitting together when a unique notification sound went off on her phone. I tried to glance at her screen, but she had it angled away from me so I couldn't see it. That felt suspicious, so I asked her what the notification was. She said it was a settings notification and refused to explain further. That incident bounced around in my head for a while, so I decided to go through her phone and find out what she was hiding. It took a few days, but I eventually got my hands on it. I looked through her apps and found out that she had created a profile with a dating app. It wasn't some app like Tinder, though. It was one of those exclusive dating apps that caters to rich men. At that moment, I realized she was done with our relationship, and I had mixed feelings. I felt sad and betrayed, but kind of relieved, like my failing relationship had been put out of its misery. I was scared to go through her messages on the app. I already realized we were over, but that didn't mean I wanted to see proof of her throwing herself at other men. I don't believe ignorance is bliss, though, so I went through the app. I noticed her bio told some half-truths. It said she was used to living a high-class lifestyle, but she was looking for a big spender who could keep up with her. She helpfully left out the fact that she was married with a daughter. I couldn't find any proof that she had slept with any of these men, but she had texted with a few of them. That didn't matter. It's just the very fact that she was on this dating app was proof of her betrayal. As far as I was concerned, she had cheated on me. The worst bit was that her bio said that she had just left a relationship with a wealthy man who didn't spoil her the way she deserved to be spoiled. So she had checked out the relationship already. Any hope I had that we might be able to fix things had just been dragged behind the shed. I had to confront her. I wasn't going to live a lie, so I needed to know where we stood. I went straight to her and asked why she was on a dating app. She started stammering and said that she was just curious and that she hadn't met anyone. I'm normally a patient person, but finding out that my wife wasn't who I thought she was had left me irritable. I shouted at her to stop lying to me, that I had read her comments. Her voice started shaking like she was about to start crying, and I cut her off to tell her to spare me the tears. Her voice kept shaking, and she said she was just looking for a distraction because she wasn't living the lifestyle that she deserved from me. "I was just talking to those guys, that's all." We got into a loud argument over it, where she insisted that she hadn't cheated, and I told her I needed time to think. I went out for a drive to clear my head. I realized that I needed to talk to Mary to find out what her mom had told her. It seemed like they were sharing everything now. Maybe she would tell me something that would back up what her mom had said. Or maybe she would confirm that her mom was over me and that our relationship was doomed. I decided I would drive down to see her the very next day. I hated involving my daughter in an issue between my wife and me, but I had to get to the bottom of this. I drove down to Mary's school and visited her in her dorm. She didn't seem too thrilled to see me, and I asked her if she was aware that her mom was on a dating app for rich men. She didn't even attempt to deny it. "Can you blame her? What's the point of being with a rich man who treats us like he's poor?" I won't even lie. I felt like crying after hearing that. You'll never know how the pain of hearing your little baby talk like that to you. Not only did she know what her mom was doing, but she supported it. So you're okay with your mom going behind my back, looking for men who could give her what exactly? Mary just rolled her eyes and said her mom wanted a man who was willing to give her the lifestyle that I was supposed to. She said I had the money, but I wasn't ready to give them that lifestyle, and they both deserved better than that. I was incredibly disappointed to find out I had raised a daughter who believed that that was justification for infidelity. Leanne had poisoned my daughter's mind, and it infuriated me. I was tired of having the same conversation over and over. I tried one last time to point out that I had provided my family's needs as well as a few luxuries where it was sensible. It's not enough. You have millions, and we live like we're middle class. She went on to explain how embarrassing it was for her that her friends were able to afford more lavish things while she had to beg me for pennies. It's not like she's leaving you right now. She's just keeping her options open. If she thought that was supposed to help, it didn't. There wasn't much for us to say after that. She kept trying to explain, but I just stood up and left. I drove back home feeling utterly heartbroken that night. My wife and daughter both felt like complete strangers to me. What Mary said rang over and over in my head. Her mom hadn't said it directly to me, but it sounded like the two of them had been discussing her divorcing me to get half of what I owned. They were so desperate for my money that Leanne was ready to throw away 20 years of marriage. I'm not going to be taken for a fool, though. If it's coming to divorce, then I'm going to get ahead of it. I had a friend who went through something similar a few years back, and he recommended the lawyer who helped protect him. I can't talk about what we're doing right now, but we'll be ready for them. Honestly, you've done a fantastic job at raising your family, OP. It's just unfortunate that they seem to have mistaken financial responsibility for, let's see how far we can push Dad before he snaps. And now they're both off on a quest for the latest shiny thing. At least you're not the one on the dating app. You could always join, though. Just make sure to set your bio to generous but responsible and see who bites. Update. I thought it was only fair for me to circle back and give a final update to everybody who invested in my story the first time. I know it's been a while since I first shared my story. Looking back at the date of the original post, it's been over 3 years. A lot has happened in that time. Like I said last time, divorce was the only option. Unfortunately for me, I had been pretty stupid back when I got married. Prenups weren't a big topic back when I got married, so I never knew how to protect myself. Even if it had come to mind, I probably wouldn't have gone through with it because I was convinced that my wife was different. She wasn't into material things like the other women. What a joke. One thing I knew for sure was that I wasn't going to let this woman claim half of my assets in a divorce. I'd spent 20 years exercising financial discipline and restraint to build up a decent sum that was supposed to support me and my wife through retirement and provide a healthy inheritance for my daughter. Now my wife and daughter wanted to rip it from me so they could spend it all living like the Kardashians or whatever vapid celebrities they idolized. I would rather set it all on fire myself before letting that happen. They were aiming to get millions out of me. I'd make sure they didn't see a single million altogether. I was going to protect as many of my assets as I could. My friend's lawyer specialized in helping wealthy men protect their assets and had helped him doing something similar a while back. We immediately got to work. Fortunately, a significant portion of my wealth came from some smart investments I made before I got married, so those couldn't be touched. I still had a lot of assets that I'd acquired over the course of my marriage, and that's where we focused our efforts. He pointed out that hiding assets from a divorce was illegal, but there were ways to move things around to make them harder to find. The only catch was that for this to work, we needed time. I didn't mind. They weren't the only ones who could play the long game. Over a period of nearly 2 years, my lawyer and I moved most of my assets around. I won't go into too much detail about what I did because it's legally gray at best, and partly because it's not the kind of thing I'm comfortable explaining. Just posting this update feels like a confession of guilt that could be used against me. What I will say is that it involved clever financial maneuvering that was mostly above even me. Offshore accounts, stable crypto, and investments that wouldn't raise red flags. I'm simplifying a lot, but you should get the point. A ton of work went into it behind the scenes to ensure this would stand up to scrutiny. I had to keep her strung along, though. I couldn't have her initiate divorce proceedings before I had successfully protected the bulk of my assets. So I pretended to make nice. I told her I'd forgiven her, and I even started spending a little bit extra on her. But I knew it wouldn't be enough, so I also used her greed against her. Over dinner, I casually talked to her about an investment I was waiting on. I mentioned that I stood to gain a few $1 million when it matured, and I could see the dollar signs in her eyes. If she waited for that deal to close before divorcing me, half of that could be hers. Of course, the investment was entirely fictitious. She was so greedy that she never even bothered to find out what could be making me such an absurd amount of money at once. It worked for me because she started asking about the investment without trying to seem too interested. I gave vague answers to keep her on the hook, always giving her an answer that made it seem a few weeks or months down the road. She patiently waited for her massive windfall that didn't exist, and the whole time I was still moving assets offshore and into crypto wallets. Eventually, my lawyer and I felt that we had moved enough of my assets to significantly protect me. More importantly, I was satisfied with what was left afterward. A quick review of my assets that weren't currently hidden made it look like I was just slightly successful. If my soon-to-be ex took half of that, I would be fine. It wasn't the massive payout she was hoping for, and I'd still have the majority of my wealth to myself. So I told her the investment unfortunately failed. She didn't take it well, and it took all of 2 months for her to serve me with divorce papers after that. All I said was, "If this is what you want, fine." I couldn't summon the energy to pretend I was hurt. We'd both been done with this relationship for years now. She had just been along for the free ride, and I had been preparing myself for the divorce. The divorce itself was vicious. She hadn't saved much in preparation for the divorce, so she got some bozo lawyer. Meanwhile, my lawyer specialized in this type of case, and we had been preparing for years. When it was time to split up the assets, and my current financial state came to light, the shock on my wife and daughter's faces made everything worth it. I simply shrugged when they looked at me. In the end, she walked away with a decent amount of money and some alimony, but it was nothing too crazy. I'd have preferred to walk away without giving that gold digger a dime, but I could live with this. That was only a drop in the bucket compared to what she had wanted to take from me. My ex and daughter were both furious about this. One day, Leanne came over and demanded to talk to me. I noticed that she was dressed very well. I don't have an eye for designers, but she was wearing pants and a bag that were plastered with logos that I'm guessing were pretty expensive. "I can see you've both started living the big life," I said. Leanne didn't find that funny. She screamed at me about how I had stolen what she deserved. I asked what she meant by that, and she told me that half of everything that I had built was hers. This woman really claimed that she had helped me build millions of dollars over the course of our marriage. Millions of dollars which she wanted to spend as soon as she found out that I was doing better than above average. All the money I had made had been in spite of her, not because of her. I simply told her that my financial records had been exposed during the divorce, and she had gotten a fair cut of everything I owned. Later, I heard from a friend that Leanne is struggling financially. She burned through the money pretty quickly, and her alimony isn't enough to support the kind of lifestyle she's been dreaming of. She never really learned how to manage finances well, and she started piling up debts that she won't be able to meet with. I heard from Mary that she started dating again pretty quickly, but none of her relationships went any distance. Mary and I have started talking again, but I'm the one that isn't so open anymore. I don't know whether she really wants to reconnect with her father or if she's just looking for money again, and that's making it hard to open up with her. She's my daughter and I love her no matter what, but I'm still hurt, and I'm not ready to forgive her just yet. Maybe someday I can undo the damage Leanne did to her and we can go back to normal. Until then, I'm not giving her a penny. It's good to hear that you managed to secure your financial future, even if it meant playing a long game. It must have been a relief to see your careful planning pay off during the divorce, especially when your ex expected a much bigger payout. As for your daughter, it's natural to feel hesitant about rebuilding that relationship given the circumstances. It's a difficult position to be in, wanting to reconnect but also being wary of her motivations. Hopefully, with time, she can understand the impact of her mother's influence and come to appreciate the values you try to instill in her. It sounds like you're taking the right approach by keeping your boundaries in place for now. Wishing you the best as you navigate this next chapter. What would you have done? Let us know in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. And please put your chair back where you found it.